Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this morning's episode. Interestingly, um, the title that first came, I mean, the title of today's episode is Every Breath Has a Story Behind It. But with that same title, there also came different titles for the same talk. And let me see if I can remember. Every breath has a story behind it, or behind every breath, there are endless potential linguistic realms. There was one more. Uh, every breath has a potential world behind it. I mean, that's pretty much the idea. So I'm gonna go with the title I've written here. Has a story behind it, but what I'm the picture I'm trying to paint is that if we were to look at the conscious acknowledgement of every breath, there is a world there. And a story requires a sense of self and a world to begin, by the way. By the way, anyone listening, uh, these talks are designed to contribute to advanced communicators. Therefore, feel free if an idea arises while you're hearing this talk to share that, to communicate that. I feel communication is the hope of our species, and it is, uh, in some sense, one of the most blessed ways that energy can be expressed. If your life was seen as a mountain, if we looked at human life and we realized there is a rise and then there is a sort of fall, I find just like how externally there is weather, internally there is weather as well. I find half of the lifetime of the human being as it's going towards its rising point, as one is reaching the peak of this life's experience or physical experience. One can say it's as if the objective realm is the focus, having a consequence in the objective realm is the focus. And as one climbs down the mountain of the lifetime, it becomes a sort of subjective realm focus. That means, like, half of life you're living as a body that is howling a mind around, a physical reality projecting a non physical reality or imagination or subjectivity or whatever you like to call it, you know? And the second, the as one climbs down the lifetime, down the tree of the lifetime, even as one climbs down the tree of life, there are more a mind moving a body rather than a body moving a mind. Human beings are eyes that have opened in an unknown and incredibly vast and endless manifest landscape. That means we are inside a painting that has not finished been drawing yet, and so we are being changed as the whole nature of the painting is being changed by every drop of paint hitting this canvas. Now, what moves the what do you call it? What moves the elemental reality, the objective realm. I find it very humorous because whether you look at it through a sort of Abrahamic angle or from a secular perspective, the theist sees God's mind is unknown. The atheist sees the indexing of the whole cosmic landscape is impossible to find an accurate value. Life is too big and too dynamic, and we identify with as far of it as we are aware of. When I have observed my own behavior throughout the day, is something that I often do is that at the end of the day, when I'm about to sleep, when I go back to sleep, I have this kind of, I don't want to say rule, but I have this kind of thing that uh, my 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 greatest effort of the day should be witnessed by me at some point by myself. That means throughout the day there will come one moment, one thing, whether it's these talks or some other moment, where I will march towards the new. And I find that's honestly what's been keeping me alive. You know, what's been kind of it's kind of strange, but when life becomes important for you, that importance echoes. That means if you consider your mind as being your moment right now, and when something is becoming important to the mind is identifying with a phenomena that it's not just survival of the fittest. The mind is trying to just remain. Think of consciousness as a candle. Think of this body of ours. Oh, this is a good analogy. Evolution. Whew. Unconscious movement of cosmic manifestation. No meaning, no meaning, no meaning, no creature, nothing. Just landscape happening. Suddenly, a part of nature becomes conscious of itself after it has gone through an objective evolution of developing limbs. For me, arms, uh, it's kind of strange, but just creatures are odd. They are too specific. And I don't want to say they're too specific, but it's like the objective evolution was to separate from the earth. Do you know what I mean? We are like the oldest, our species is like the oldest son of Gaia leaving the house, being the first to leave, you know? And so I feel we separated from the earth. That means earth was all earth, and then a part of earth, in some sense, separated from the earth to a degree to now be able to walk on the earth separately as a separate phenomena, right? So there was the objective evolution was our separation from the earth physically. Now, the subjective evolution, which I speak about, and I haven't heard it in any of the educational systems to be brought up, was when the subjective evolution was at the end of the objective evolution. There was a metamorphosis, butterfly style. What does that mean? That means just like a caterpillar goes how can I tell you? It's like a caterpillar transforms, just like the cells of a caterpillar die in the cocoon. As the last cell of the caterpillar dies, the cell of the butterfly emerges. I find after there was enough awareness to an objective self, then the creature separated from itself. You see, guys, it's kind of fascinating. It's like a 90-degree shift, then another 90-degree shift, you know? So what do I mean by that? That means, okay, let's think of it this way. Wow, wow, wow. So many truths in nature are strangely cyclical, as if they've been commanded to continue or are dying to remain, you know? But anyways, I guess the point I'm trying to share is that at the end of the objective evolution, the subjective evolution began. The subjective evolution was the first time we can say realistically it would be something like this creature that was walking and roaming the earth suddenly noticed it is a self, noticed it is an individual. So first action of evolution seems, I'm saying seems because nobody can go that far. Like evidentially, like realistically, we can theorize, but we can't 100% realistically know. These are gaps in our history. But I feel what took place, and it's not just even an issue of gaps. Even if there was truth, the way man receives it is so highly multidimensional that that truth can be positioned in endless ways. Believe it or not, it's just like it's like learning so many different languages to say the same thing. You know, in all the languages. You see it's still the same thing. It just has a different appearance, existential appearance, but the experience is the same. Anyways, the objective evolution, a metamorphosis occurs, the subjective evolution. So it was like first the creature was like, whoa, my body's not the earth. Then the creature was like, whoa, I'm not just this body, I'm me. So the emergence of a subjective sense of me was the epitome of the objective evolution. That means, strangely, regardless of what anyone says, it seems that matter has evolved to a thought to itself, to a mysterious thought to itself. That means the universe was this silent known phenomena. The moment consciousness emerged, it became an unknown. It became an unknown silence, and the creature began identifying with the sounds it made, with the movements it made, and then character was set into motion, programs of character. So what does that mean? That means we were just a breathing phenomena, and then as we became conscious and had the ability of subjectivity, every breath found itself in a story. So for me, existence is a sphere, experience is a bigger sphere which existence or the conscious existence of the waking state in the moment is a part of. So if someone was to ask me, existentially, I will tell you we're limited temporary beings. Existence isn't temporary, but we are. Our appearance, our emergence in it is. And that's a good thing. That means we got places to go as a being, you know? If any person who wants to be immortal, it's like a child not wanting to go to the next grade. It's like the child is ready to go to the next grade. Even the teacher's like, all right, go to the next grade, kid. You finished this course, you know, you finished this grade, and then the kid's like, no, I love this class so much. And the teacher's like, go, kid. New kids have to come in this class. So eventually we see the space that we occupy now, enjoy it strangely because it is yours. One can say if the mind, there's a potential that it's multidimensional, there's also a potential that what appears as temporalness in one dimension is eternalhood in another. What does that mean? That means it's as if it's strange, but every being is living a double life when their world is divided or seen in a duality. That means the moment if you as a person go and walk in the street and see people and you're like, yo, that's a good person, that's a bad person, you're cherry picking more morality behind people's faces, like cherry picking projected self projected morality behind people's faces, like it fascinated me to see how much what we think we know is hovering in the middle of nowhere. How it became fascinating to me when I noticed that every idea I have ever had on my conscious waking state ever, it has innately known change means what is now here now is not going to be here now. And this is the cool thing, because when you look at mystical traditions, when you look at ancient sort of metaphysical systems, what do you notice? You notice it's as if they say that suffering comes from the changing world. To become changeless is another way of saying you're enlightened. And so people would be like, how do you attain this ultimate state? They would run after it like as if it's a Boxing Day and they're in like a store with good sales. Like, I notice that sometimes if you rush towards something for a long time, most likely you're in an illusion. If you are in a system where you have to run super quick, most likely there's, and it's like this, it's like looking at yourself in the mirror and wondering if there are people out in the world that are living simpler lives than you. I think this is a good exercise. Look at yourself in the mirror, whoever you are, and just acknowledge the level of life you're living, and then look in the mirror, close your eyes and then open your eyes again and look in the mirror, and now wonder how many people in this world are living with less than what you have and are living with more than what you have, and what kind of states of mind they're administering with. I think it can be said to be inefficient to have one state of mind when the world has so many different locations and various ways it can be evoked in man's attention. That means it's like people who are still playing belief games and are fighting over beliefs. It's another way of saying, like, have you not realized this vast empty page where everything can be written on? Every invention was the introduction of a new reality. I find survival of the fittest, a sort of Darwinian evolution, is another way of saying uh, attention did the lights didn't want to go out to themselves. Oh, I was using the analogy of the candle. So in this, imagine the objective evolution is the candle coming into being, but the candle has no clue. There's no light in the room. It's in pure darkness. When the candle is lit, when conscious awareness to phenomenology occurs, that candle lights up a room. What does that mean? That means your conscious energy illuminates a sensory landscape to extract from. And check this out, just like the candle in a room, in a dark room, you turn it on, it casts shadows upon all objects. And consciousness is like a light, strangely, a light of our inner realms, that when it enters any room, any object, anything that your attention sees, your consciousness, like a light, casts a shadow upon that object as a subject. So we can say subjects are the shadows of a direct experience. They are the dualistic, time caged shadows of an attributeless direct experience. And the moment something is attributeless, that means we are seeing the uncontained. We are seeing that which cannot be put anywhere. It is so just being that whatever we do, it is still being. So if you want to look for truth and you just go the path of self, you only look at yourself, not the world, you will in some sense be enlightened through the inner realms. If you look at the world, you will in some sense be enlightened as the world. So it's like, think of it this way. There was a Sufi dervish saying that would say in dervish culture, the concept of the pearl, Pearl, the pearl, it was another way of saying like somebody was enlightened. And then there was the saying that said, um, uh, the one who has the pearl is not the one who has found it in the mountains and has it. It's the one who has the pearl in the busy market. So some people are You can say self-enlightenment is the subtraction method. World enlightenment is the addition method. That means one manner it is making the archetype transparent, nullifying the archetype. This is traditional spirituality. Modern spirituality is infinitizing the archetype. That means ancient spirituality was like, slow down, kids, you'll get enlightened. Mr. Within is saying modern spirituality and mysticism is like, speed up the awareness to communication, aim for the advanced. That means one intention that will advance civilization the quickest is for whoever you are, whatever circumstance you have as a human being, just making a conscious decision to attempt the advanced modality of your moment in a moment of effort. So that means if you have to perform, if you have to do something, do it in the most advanced way you can. And to be able to, you have to observe the phenomenology first, then comment. So I can't literally say anything if there's nothing to see behind my eyes. This is why I say there's the language threshold, because at some point of self-inquiry, ideology is no longer a channel of expression. It becomes inner rhythms. So what does that mean? That means when you move your thoughts, when you move your attention as a thought, you feel those are your thoughts. But when your attention moves without your kind of, it's like when here's the thing. When your attention moves the world, you feel you have free will. When the world moves your attention, you think it's the will of nature or the divine will or whatever. So there has to be a yin yang balance between how the conscious looks at the unconscious and how the unconscious would be the conscious. That's a level of philosophy that I'm fascinated about. That means if Carl Jung was alive, I would probably interview him in a very unique way if I had the chance. Because the issue is not just about mapping, it's not just about knowing where to go, it's about wondering if your eyes will see the treasure. As the old saying goes, the show must go on. And the show goes on with or without us. Life is the opportunity to just be conscious. It's as if all the atoms in the cosmos are dancing in a strange way. They're moving in a strange way. And they're moving in such a strange way that this stranger, the human being, kind of feels like a stranger to itself. I realize the nature of the design of our intelligence also limits, similar to our sensory perception, uh, um, what we can process out of the moment. So what does that mean? Because if, for example, the nature of language, anytime truth is sought through language, through communication, one can say it's as if the truth, any linguistic truth, will reflect, just like how they say um, man was made in the image, the creation was made in the reflection of the creator. Similarly, it's as if the process of from silence, noise emerging will be the underlying philosophical um, implication of all truths in language. What does that mean? That means you want to know what all linguistic truths are. They are the absence of silence. And so I find the absence of God is similar. The absence of even the concept of God, it's I totally understand religious perspectives. Um, I honor how all human beings have dared hold their minds, but I will say that after some point, the purpose of the artwork is not just to give you a good feeling. It is to build. It is to design. It is to uh, assume that your greatest effort is still the shadow of your greatest self, and then there will be an everlasting update. It's kind of like looking at existence and being like, "Oh, existence. You have developed individually conscious, objective creatures. Could there be a simultaneous chance that you have also created the opposite?" And what is the opposite? Collective, unconscious, subjective beings, or beyond subjectivity beings. That means we're not just the particle, we're also the field. As the field, the mind finds itself to be the whole world. As the particle, the mind finds itself to be a small known and a big unknown, uh, rather than a small unknown and a big known, big sense of knowing. Every breath has a story behind it. Every moment has its manifest glow. Every known world has the space of its unknown. If we are multidimensional, if we are advancing, if we look at evolution and we see things weren't there and now they are, it means we are in ultimately the game of emergence. That means I think it's kind of like poetically, you can say it's like a coin flip. The moment you wonder about creation, life, the even the notion of birth and life coming, the breath coming into the lungs of the child. Imagine being a doctor, bringing life into this world. Imagine the parents that raise that child. Imagine that who that child becomes and the children that that man raises. And so it becomes. How can I tell you? It's like there's some when you look at life, it's an opportunity to be something. When you look at death, it's as if it is the aftermath of the opportunity to be something. That means you cannot die unless you have lived. And if your life, with this current evolutionary update of how the human design is in 2020, sometimes I feel many people who are in the creative field, and many I was kind of shocked. Like you see some of these great bestseller writers. I'm a person who feel the concepts of writer's block is hollow. Let me tell you why. Because most people want to see new things, but they don't think about creating space in their perception to see new things. And the way I found a way in my life to kind of like create that space was to realize I am not a thought, but I was acting as if I am. And it doesn't mean we should all stop acting and become a silent, enlightened civilization. It means that we have to just be conscious that when we speak, we are evoking the moment as an individual conscious being. That means some people think they are something, and then they go to various situations in their life and they feel they should already know. But I'm telling you, knowledge is the act of making the conscious, making the unconscious conscious. Pretty much every human being you see ever born is looking at something unknown, and their intelligence is attempting to know it. And that way of knowing it has to do with their alertness, with what they notice to be the change in the moment. And most people start feeling that change is only external. People can live lives where those people who are upset, who suffer from external phenomena, they haven't understood that behind their eyes, the evaluation of all conception can be remodeled in an instant. They asked Kabir, how long does it take to get enlightened? Kabir was like, are you ready for this? Half of an instant. What does that mean? That means timeless. That means before time could breathe, eternity was breathing. I sometimes poetically feel like the conscious breath of an the breath, the con how would I say it? The breath of an eternal being can only be consciousness. That means we are under the impression that because energy has come into a certain unique structure, we have emerged as intelligent beings. But I find Mr. Within finds that the uh, that it's not the objective constitution, that to identify with a body is to feel you are only the earth when the earth stands in an unknown heaven, the heavens. I don't know. It's about being conscious and ultimately effort. I mean, just take it into. Let's look at it this way. The New Age community, the self-help industry, all of them are like, work hard, people. You will achieve your dreams. And whether you work hard or you work smart or work efficient or work inefficient, you see at the end of it, it's work. And work is effort. And effort is expression regardless of consequence. That means if a person has to always think, I don't want to say, I don't want to say it like that. Let me say it like, some things you will never know until you open that door. And a lot of people who you can say get distracted by future creation. Some people, believe it or not, I find actually our subjective realms are our first sort of experience of virtual reality, of a linguistico virtual reality. You know, and honestly, that is life. Because it's dynamic, there will always be a door that can open. The mind engages endless narratives to itself. Just think about how many ways you as a human being in this lifetime, through all the laps you've ran around the sun, how many moments you have existed to yourself as a character in a story, and how many times that character has changed in the story, and the story has changed, and even the realization of how the storyteller, which is ultimately your direct experience of all indirect phenomena. Language is like, again, like an indirect shadow of the direct experience, which is the light. Because what is consciousness? It is illumination. It's many, a story can get perverted very quick. And when I say perverted, I don't just mean it in a sexual context. I mean that certain things in nature have a balance, have a certain way they are kept. If that way it is kept is interfered with, it will cause a deviation. It's as if somebody's drawing artwork and some other person comes and starts trying to move their hand or disturb or move the page or move the table. It's as if like an effort of that is on a sort of natural rhythmic schedule is being disturbed. When that happens, just like how when a virus enters a body, what happens? The white blood cells are like, get out of here. To the virus, the white blood cells march like cavalry, to defend the kingdom. And similarly, in nature, when a human being, the human mind allows you to suddenly be like the virus to the earth or be like the white blood cells to the earth. The white blood cells, they are, in some sense, the guardians of the body, the micro guardians. And so what I mean by that is if we take into consideration 0.0, whatever amount of zeros you want, 1% chance that this world is an organism, the whole universe, all this stuff we think is empty space is all still inside an organism, you know? Excuse me. If the whole world is an or if the all of if the whole cosmos is alive, If something within the body system, the cosmic body system, is dysfunctional, let's see. It may be that karma is uh, the natural administration of the cosmos. You can say we are natural beings, but we have an opportunity to deviate from our nature. That opportunity to deviate from our nature gives all the concepts of angels in the world something to do. The purpose of it's as if I wondered for a long time, guys, that if man hadn't made a mistake, what would be the purpose of the angel? Would the angel just be a being in a world, or was it that when man fell, the angel suddenly found a mind to exist in? I find every moment has an efficient vision and an inefficient vision. And if the person is patient, the efficient vision arises. And the efficient vision tends to arise when the observer, when you enter a room with as your mind first, then your body. When you enter a room as your mind first, that means the being has no intention to communicate, has the intention to receive. So it's like, think about it this way, it's not just people that lead to a sort of subjective arising of your inner realms. Um, the whole your whole moment is a way you can say the cosmos is speaking to you. The how every moment is being is a way where nature is attending to itself, is holding itself. So it was, I'm telling you, there is this is one of the blessings of this lifetime of ours. And it is the ability to be conscious that there is the unknown. Do you know how many animals in nature they have no clue about star systems and constellations beyond our clouds? Because they cannot see more than they know, more than the program of knowing, biological programming they're in. Sometimes I have looked at animals, and if you notice, animals when their environment changes, their gaze changes. It's as if they're playing a chess game with their ecosystem. Animals, inferior animals. When I say animals, I mean like lesser than the lesser in capability than the human species. Now I don't know. There could be maybe like those shows like I don't know, mice wanting to take over the world or cats and dogs wanting to take over. It's just like it's a chess game between nature. The ecosystem is pretty much being the, let's say, that lion's imagination. That means when we look at our sense of what is imagination, it's like a thought that appeared out of nowhere. It's a thought that suddenly was evoked, as if just like a ninja, you threw something on the ground and like smog, some sort of smoke came, smoke flash, and you got out of there. In other words, language is evocational. And so, I don't know, just like how every step of when a person walks from one place to another, from point A to point B, every step is its own being. And it's that's the multiplicity I'm talking about, and it's not a new idea. Even this thing that scientists think theoretical physicists think parallel dimensions is a new idea. I'm telling you, it's an idea. It's actually one of the most ancient ideas. That means one of the most modern ideas being claimed of there being parallel universes, multiverse theory. It is the most ancient idea. That is what the concept of the seven heavens suggested. That there were other worlds, other reflections of the moment. That means you can say it was as if in ancient cultures they saw as if Earth being existence being the singular dimension, but then experience being all the degrees around this point. And so that's the thing that when we think about like the parallel reality kind of when we think about the parallel reality approach, what is that? It's as if like in one dimension you're combing your hair left, in one dimension you're combing your hair right, in one parallel reality. So what does that mean? That means the same person, but the difference in action. So what does that mean? That means it's a sort of theoretical parallelhood that is dependent on choice, not the existence. you know And when Heraclitus said, "No man can step in the same river twice, and it is not the same man, and it is not the same river," his multidimensional framework was even advancing upon parallel realities and saying that it's not only something different about the old, but also something same. It's completely different than the old. What does that mean? That means you are not who you were a second ago. You are not, or even let's put time aside, you are not who you were a thought ago, an ideological viewpoint ago. Okay, so great question, Ivan. Welcome to the chat section, guys. Good morning. You know, I feel like a person who's entered a boardroom meeting, and then he's put his hand on his chest and he's nodding to every single person in the room. That's a great question. So let me tell you, um, the reason we can nullify. The reason I can. So guys, anybody who's not seeing the chat section, Ivan asked a great question. He says, if words cannot be put to it, can it be understood intellectually? And why bother talking about it? And is it because it generates ideas? Uh, Here's the thing. Think of it this way. Um, me and you, imagine me and you and everybody who's listening to this talk, we are inside a house and we start hearing music. We're in this hall, but we start hearing music from outside of the room. Okay, unknown music we cannot fathom, and just some sound and melody me and you can't understand. And let's say 8 billion other people can't understand. It's just this unknown melody. Now, we cannot see it, but we know that the unknown melody is here. That means we know the unknown melody is here, but we can't see from our limited room of sensory perception or limited perception, you know, beyond where the sound is coming from. So it's worth talking about the mystery of what is this music? What is this conscious living that is occurring in the middle of nowhere? In the desert of the cosmos, man has made a cup of coffee, like so that's the approach I take, Ivan. That it cannot be put words cannot be put to it, not because that is nothing, because words are limited, because the technology of language is limited. We cannot blame truth for being inconceivable just because we can't conceive it. You know. That means, like, let's say a person is in a traffic jam and the person's honking And there's a sage sitting on a mountain or on a hill that sees that the traffic jam can see much ahead than the person, and sees that there's a truck that's there, trucks two trucks that hit each other, and there's a car crash. So the person who can't see the car crash is like, oh man, what is it, what, this world doesn't make sense, this world doesn't make sense, why isn't traffic going, and that person thinks it's the person in front of him that's to blame. This is why the blame game doesn't work, because you may be blaming the wrong person. All those people blaming like some group. It's like this group's causing our suffering, and that group's like, hey man, my some other group is causing my suffering, and then you go and you follow the regression, and eventually you can't blame effort that projected from the void. So Ivan, I would say that, but I speak about it. Let me tell you why I speak about it. Why I find it's worth speaking about it, because in 2020, I feel we have lived enough as just portraits of language to ourselves. I feel me and you are alive at a time that Aldous Huxley, Terence McKenna, Ludwig Wittgenstein, various continental philosophers would have loved to be alive now, because me and you are at the point where the ship is turning sails. And it's another way of saying that our experience of it's like experience is evolving beyond language. And I am realizing we're at the frontiers. We're in the front lines of uh, having an opportunity to see what else everything we know so far can mean. And our minds are seem to be the most useful and valuable thing. Do they not? Our minds seem to be the greatest tool that we have found in the desert, again, in this kind of deserted island of the cosmos. And anytime there's effort, there has to be a sort of blueprint to the subjective framework, so it will be pathological. You can say the pathology is based on the person's DNA, which every person's DNA is unique. So that's the thing, it's like Mr. Within is saying, rather than us just thinking we're bodies and the mind is like this mystery forever, and all subjectivity is being hammered by rational materialistic judgment into nothingness. Well, let me tell you, the easiest way to make a civilization break down is not to not give it resources and the physically suffer. It's when the civilization can't wonder anymore. And because we as beings still can wonder, and we're still natural enough, you know, that's why I know civilization is not that messed up. It's just underdeveloped. It's as if our vision, the way we can perceive civilization is more advanced than the way civilization is. And really, it's because we have to find a way to have the efforts of human beings echo more than their lifetime. And I feel a grand network will be made. That's what I call the school of Athens 2.0. It's a global, like a school of Athens where people are philosophically communicating. And you got to see, it must have been cool. I'm telling you, just like how in 2020 a new movie comes out and the person goes to the theater and puts on those 3D goggles to see that movie. Similarly, back in the day, in the School of Athens days, there wasn't that much entertainment, you know. So what was one sort of high level, what was equivalent to the cinema, to the theater, was how people would go back in the day. Imagine your friend would come up to you, you're like, yo man, Plato and Diogenes are debating in the School of Athens, let's go watch, you know. And imagine you and a bunch of people went and suddenly saw Plato and Diogenes, debating and challenging each other, and their language would be for the first time seeing two men's minds fight. When the mind fights, it's not a physical consequence, and it shouldn't be a physical consequence. That means all the violence, like it's another way of saying, it's as if some, it's like imagine in the future this little kid would be born, and this little kid will go to the United Nations and be like all the nations that have invested in military seem to be foolish. And this little kid who seems to know nothing has gone to the UN and is saying, and he says, the little kid explains why, and he says, because even regardless of their military expenses of every nation, instead of war, literally we can have the greatest game designers, video game developers replicate the exact military of nations and create the multiplayer virtual battlefield, and they can fight, and whoever wins the game is the same as whoever wins the war, you know. And I don't want to say it's the same as whoever wins the war, but I can say that if it's a inner value game, it doesn't need to have an external a drastic consequence, you know. And ideas evolve, by the way. That's what I noticed. That's what I've kind of learned from these talks I've given throughout the years. That when a person engages the same question or the same deep question, their mind eventually will notice various attempts of animating an answer. So I can say that if somebody says, "What is the meaning of life?" I'm like, the show is still going on. But what is the meaning of one moment? Anything that it can mean any symbol you want to put upon the language. Like instead of calling this object a cup, I can call it um, a chair. I can call a cup a chair. I can, it has you can say linguistically, it seems similar. It's symbol attribution, but I feel it's an unknown. It's pretty much light has entered the eyes of a phenomena that by the nature of being alive must experience an unknown to know from. That means we feel knowledge is the foundation of civilization. Mr. Within is saying the unknown that inspires knowledge is the foundation of civilization. Or as the ancient Greeks would call it, the logos. The logos ultimately would mean a trust beyond language of the moment, and how the moment when you realize your mind is being your moment, language is that virtual reality game you're in. It's simultaneous. Because imagination appears as, again, an invisible room that the person is in. That means when you visualize something, unless you say it, it doesn't come. Now, it doesn't mean the antenna of different people is the same signal. Some people can have a strong antenna, you know. And some people can have uh, more experience with the antenna, even though their antenna may not be stronger. So there's various angles of approach. Pretty much, just like we say it's a new day, it's a new witnessing of phenomenology. And every day has its own ontological simulation. I'm telling you, just your attention is your true leader. Nothing can change if your attention doesn't change. Did you know that? That's why Galileo said you can't teach anyone anything. You can only make them realize it within yourself. You know, and playfully saying like, in relationships, for example, the communication between the sexes is another way of saying the dysfunction or miscommunication is another way of saying that sometimes when people communicate, They don't want to be heard. They want their inner reality to be acknowledged. And when you suddenly acknowledge their inner reality, they get a bit they calm down. You see, I find because subconsciously we are temporary existential creatures, or it appears that way biologically, so every person, I feel subconsciously, because the human mind is advanced, it is subconsciously reacting to an emptiness, and then that emptiness is also an inevitable emptiness. Because it's reacting to emptiness, that means every person is freaking out underneath their well organized social personality. It doesn't mean they're freaking out. It just means the value of the system that they are can has been noticed by their intelligence to potentially be void. What does that mean? That means if you can see that a business can fail, an enterprise can fail, and the enterprise of this human being can fail. And it's not necessarily failure, it's just a walk in a different direction. There's many angles, there's many human beings. You can say like consciousness, the biology is like a tool in the hand of the soul. And what the soul is an unknown space where intelligence is aware of itself moving. It's the return to the unknown. That was one of my fears. That means let me tell you, my fear wasn't transition, even though that is overwhelming. But my fear, was that humanity loses sight of how the unknown is the space where there is enough tolerance for innovation to arise. You see, what is the situation? It's a rock in the middle of nowhere. We're calling nowhere now here. And what are we doing here now? We have nothing else to do other than build. We are conscious builders of not just our own lives, but the life of our civilization that has endured 4 billion years, as so considered.